Good evening again, everyone. Welcome to the webinar. Thanks for voting. We've got the results of this evening up, your polls up on the board here. I'm going to turn it over to you at this time, Rick, and give you the screen here. And now we know that several of you can type in questions in the chat box. Please feel free to type in your questions anytime during the course of the webinar. The earlier you type them in, the easier it will be for us to get to them. So feel free to just type something in whenever you think of it, and we will get to as many of those as we can tonight. And with that, Rick, to turn it over to you.
Thank you, Shannon. Welcome again, everyone. I want to thank Shannon, Leslie, and Barb for being on this webinar. There's a lot of moving parts, and it's going to take a team effort to make this transition go as smooth as we can make it. I am anxious to get this information out to the coordinators, and I want you to think, for those of you who attended the IRD in Montreal, think of this presentation as a continuation of the conversation we had. In Montreal, I had a sense of what was going to be happening. I was talking with a couple of you and throwing out questions and getting a feel of what was going on. And it was fun to see how this was developing. I'm sure, as any transition, there's a lot of questions out there, and we've tried to cover some of the obvious questions in this presentation. And I just want to thank Shannon again for helping put the front part of this webinar together so that we can stay on point and make sure everything is said correctly. That's why Barb and Leslie's in the background, to make sure I don't go off wandering, because I'm not used to sitting down presenting, so I might wander away from the screen. But we're going to go through these slides, and then, as Shannon said, please type in your questions, and it won't take long to go through the slides, and we'll have plenty of time to take your questions. So one question, obviously, is when is this happening? And the regional directors will continue through February 28th. Any questions or concerns to go to your RD through February 28th. The 7 service program administrators will start March 1st. Service program administrators are going to be headquarters employees who will work from their home offices. The service program administrators will now be the first point of contact for the coordinators, and the coordinators will still be the first point of contact for area captains. I'm going to go ahead and read the slides as much as verbatim as I can for those of you who are on just the phone. So what was the process? Regional directors knew of the transition in September, soon after the board of directors voted for the change. The job was advertised on public job boards. Regional directors were invited to apply, and they shared that information down to the field staff. Those who did apply were interviewed for the position. We had over 100 applicants, and there were only 7 spaces to fill. Many good people applied, and surely the decision was tough. So what is changing for field staff? There are no plans to make coordinators or area captains employees of TOPS Club. Coordinators will eventually be empowered to do more without permission. Less paperwork going back and forth. Okay. So what's changing for the field staff? There are no plans to make coordinators or area captains employees of TOPS Club. Coordinators will eventually be empowered to do more without permission. Less paperwork going back and forth. And this is really important, because I know when some of the information came out on the transition, there was a sense that there was going to be major changes for coordinators, and maybe we're going to have less coordinators, and that's far from the thought process. We're going to hopefully have more coordinators involved at that level. And then the area captain mission will not change, and recruiting additional area captains will allow them to serve more chapters closer to home. Why is this happening? Well, the world, the weight loss industry, and TOPS itself have undergone tremendous changes in 70 plus years. While the market is growing, TOPS is shrinking. So in 1948, TOPS was the first and only weight loss group. Today, the US weight loss industry is worth $70 billion. We've tried to grow by doing what we've always done, but new strategies and skills are needed to move forward. Is the SPA just a new name for a regional director? The new position is completely different from a regional director. One is that they'll no longer be independent contractors, they're going to be employees of TOPS Club. So the SPAs will have more time to coach and support their staff. Paperwork and expectations will become more uniform. SPAs will promote more teamwork and less bureaucracy. And service program administrators will work together with the president and headquarters staff to efficiently and effectively serve chapters and grow membership. So who is going to be your service program administrator? The service program administrators have reached out to you confidentially to start setting up contact information. But to put it in perspective, and you can see on the map, Mary Mullane has New England and the Rust Belt. Judy Pruitt has the Mid-Atlantic Southeast area. Deanna Bees has Upper Midwest and the Northern Plains. Nancy Riley has South Central and Southwest. Margie Fisher, Western Rockies to the Pacific. Carol Harper, Eastern Canada, and Brenda Nichols, Western Canada. So now about all the what about questions, like what about the chapter manual? Making Your Chapter Great is up for reprint in the next year. The field staff source book, that's going to be revised later on in the year after we've identified areas that need change and update. And the website will be updated on a rolling basis as staff time allows. What about forms and processes? For now, if it calls for RD approval, you'll be sending it to the service program administrator. Examples would be healthy and active requests, publicity volunteers, health fairs. Everything else, well, we'll find many things along the way that will need to be tweaked. Send questions and concerns to your service program administrator. How will members be informed? This has been a challenge to try to keep everything online. You imagine coordinating with the current staff of regional directors, coordinating with the new personnel coming on, the service program administrators, working with the communication department to line things up so when TOPS News comes out, and my inability to think very far into the future with the timelines. So at this point, please continue to keep the outcome of the service program administrator search confidential until Monday, February 11th. Regional directors emailed leaders and web designates farewell letters today. That's ongoing right now. Headquarters will email the service program hello or introductory letters to all the leaders and web designates by Friday afternoon, the 8th. An email from me will be explaining the changes will be sent out to the chapters over the weekend. The same letter will appear in the March-April TOPS News President's Message and in the chapter mailing arriving early March. Now, there's some repeats, there is overlaps, and I can guarantee you that even though we've lined up everything the best we can, some folks will probably not get the information until later on in the month. But this is the best way we can handle this in order for the regional directors to have time to send their goodbye letters to their members in their area and just to try to keep some sense of order as we make this transition. Now I see on the slide it's time for our next poll, right, Shannon?
Okay, excellent. So I'll go ahead and read the question for those of you who are joining us on the phone and aren't able to see. And the question is, what are your chapters saying about the upcoming changes? And the possible answers are, it's a positive development, they don't see a need for the change, mixed reaction, confusion, or little to no reaction from the chapters. It looks like most of you have voted. We'll give it just another couple of seconds if anyone still wants to weigh in. And just a reminder, these are all confidential. We have no idea who's voting for what on any of those. So do feel free to just let us know how you're really feeling. That's so important to the transition, is for us to have honest feedback with each other. Okay, I'm going to go ahead and close the poll at this time, and then we will share the results, and then we'll even unshare them afterwards. Okay, so these are the results, once again, for those of you joining us on the phone who can't see these on your screen. It's a positive development, 4%. They don't see a need for the change, 4%. Mixed reaction, 29%. Confusion, 9%. And our most popular answer this evening, little to no reaction from chapters. Thanks everybody for participating. Back to you, Mr. Rick.
Okay, I'll go to the next slide. How can you help? Be part of the solution. If you see something to be fixed or clarified, tell your service program administrator. Be positive and patient. Give your service program administrator a chance to settle in. Understand that it will take time to work out the kinks. Spread the facts, not fiction. Members may be confused or unaware of the new structure. If you don't know, please don't guess or repeat second-handed information. Two very powerful, useful phrases are, I'll get back to you on that, and let me find that out for you. They've served me very well over the past 11 months, trust me. Questions and answers. This is where we're, if you haven't already, encouraged for you to ask anything. Again, as Shannon had mentioned, we don't know who's asking the questions, and we're not looking to find out how or anything. We just want to see, is there a possibility that we've missed something or we didn't clarify something? Keep it constructive. These changes are happening for the benefit of TOPS. Now it's up to us to move the ball forward. So Shannon, do we have any questions?
We do. First, a clarification on the chapters. It has been mentioned in your president's message and in the changes in the wind article next to that, and a few TOPS News articles, that we would be having service program administrators and that there would be changes coming. So that has been shared generally in TOPS News, but certainly chapters do not have the full picture at this point. But several of you were saying that you can answer the poll because the chapters hadn't been told yet. There have been pieces of information that have gone out through official channels, let's say, over the last several months. So just to clarify on that point.
Yes,
all right.
Shannon, I'd like to add to that point. And that's why we're trying to do overlapping of messaging and things like that. When I've visited chapters or TOPS events, it's clear that not everybody reads TOPS News cover to cover. So it just takes a while. And I've said it before, and I know Barb has reminded me, it takes more than 2 times for information to get out for everybody to get it. I think there's been a survey done, it's probably up to 7 times. So there's times where we will overlap and repeat things. It's just to make sure that everybody gets the information in the best timeline that we can create. Thanks, Shannon.
Sure. All right, so one of our questions are, will the person have a travel expense budget to visit the chapters in the area they cover?
The short answer is yes. They're going to be visiting the areas. A timeline or the mechanisms and how we're going to have a more physical presence to keep the boots on the ground, like I mentioned in Montreal, is still being worked out.
Okay, here's another good one. It has to do with the upcoming recognition days. And the question is, for the chapter average weight loss of 8 pounds plus, are they still an RD award to be given at recognition days in the region?
Yes, and just let me back up a second. All the regional directors will be visiting their events to say goodbye, to say thank you, to still participate in handing out awards. That's whole part of the transition. If and depending on scheduling and stuff, if a service program administrator is also there, the two of them will be able to work out a system on how to cover all the awards. But I'd like to point out that Barb and I, when we were doing the IRD in Montreal, we made it a point that we did everything together because to show that there was a good transition. Also, because the members who were division winners and royalty, they achieved that goal while Barb was president. Similar to what's going to be happening here, the state division and PRD, provincial, winners and stuff all happened under the watch of the current regional directors. So over the next few months, they're still going to be there doing the regional events and doing the awards. So that one in particular, yes, would still be an RD award.
Okay, very good. Our next question is are the new service program administrators going to be living in their areas of responsibility? And also, as a follow-up question, will the chapters be tasked to fund the service program administration?
You cut out,
Did you
Shannon.
hear that last part of the question? Okay. So the first one is, are the service program administrators going to live in their areas? And the second is, will chapters be tasked to fund their travels to the area?
Okay. As far as living in the area, realizing that we've gone from 10 regions down to 7, the service program administrator will most of them will be within the general geographic area, but there's still a larger area to cover. There is one that will not be living in one of the states in her area. As far as the budget of the service program administrators traveling, I'm not sure about how what was meant by the chapters be on the hook, so to speak. All the funding and all the situations going, how well, I guess the best way to do it is the funding streams that are available to TOPS are all under consideration, and it's to be determined. Again, I'm going to try to answer these questions the best I can, and I'm trying to be as transparent as possible. But there is a line of in situations and items that have to be put in place to go forward. But to say that the chapters will be responsible as an individual chapter, no.
Okay. The next question is, Since the service program administrators will have an expense account, will states need to be, oh, whoops, I'm sorry, we just answered that one. There are a lot of questions here, so please bear with me. I'm trying to read and listen at the same time. The question that we want to ask is there any consideration being given to having meetings like they used to have in the past with field staff gathering in an area with all of their field staff?
Okay, that comes under training and sharing of information, and so that for that part, all the service program administrators will be gathering at headquarters during the March 6th, March 7th period, and we're going to be discussing that because we're going to want their input on how they're going to handle sharing of information. We're going to use more train the trainer situations. So will it be something similar to what it was before? Maybe. Maybe it'll be something entirely different. But to rest assured, we are trying to make positive changes. And that's why a moment ago when I was trying to think of the different scenarios of the funding questions and stuff of that nature, some of the questions wouldn't even apply to a regional director. They didn't have to live in their area, and the funding was a different mechanism for them to attend. So there, again, going back a moment ago, there's overlaps, there's some tweaking going on, but there's still they're still not on board officially yet. So until we get a chance to meet with them and figure out the best way, because they've been brought in to this transition because they've got ideas and skills that can help move the ball forward.
Okay, lots of questions tonight about our events. This person wants to know, members want to know how the change is going to affect how we're going to do things within our state. Are there going to be changes to the state recognition days, area recognition days, and international recognition days?
For the current events, there's definitely no changes. For future regional events like 2020, I can't say there won't be any changes, but the changes will be made in consulting with the coordinators. See, that's where this is going to fall into place, is that the coordinators, remember back a few slides ago, will be empowered to have I don't want to say do more, because you folks are already doing a lot, but to have it more so that you don't have to run everything up the flagpole, so to speak. So some of the changes might be changes that you want to make, and in consulting with the service program administrator.
Well, Rick, I think this might be a good time to launch our poll about the Topsygram, as long as we're talking about regional events.
Right.
For those of you who are might not realize that it's the Topsygram, for the last several years, Barb has done a video version of the President's message that was distributed to the RDs and through the TOPS website so that you could play a message from the President in days gone by. And even still now, we had a little yellow Topsygram that looks like the old-fashioned telegram, where that same message wording would be shared and someone would read it. So that's what we're talking about. For those of you who haven't been on the coordinator train a really long time and may not be familiar with that Topsygram lingo. And why don't we take another question while we have a few more people weighing in?
Okay.
Will the service program administrator be an advisor to our state recognition days? Will we give them money at our state recognition days?
Um, as an advisor, yes, that's part of their responsibility. But again, the coordinator will have, I hate to use the word control, but more input, maybe, I guess, is a way of doing it. But as far as money, no, I don't understand the the premise of that question. It's just they're going to be TOPS employees. So there's IRS rules that we have to worry about and stuff. So and again, that will also go back to why we're holding off rewriting the source book for field staff, because the source book will have this guidance in there, just that we haven't figured out all the pieces yet.
Okay, it looks like we've closed our poll here, and we have our results, which again I'll read out loud for benefit of those of us joining on the phone. And it says, how do you use the Topsygram at your recognition days? Whoops, excuse the typo. I read it on stage, 28%. I show the video, 26%. I prefer the video if the facility and helpers are equipped to show it, 41%. And I generally don't use it, 6%. Thanks,
Okay,
everybody.
that helps. Thanks.
Right. It looks like we're getting more questions, which is great. Again, the sooner you can type them in, the longer we have to kind of go through and make sure we can get to as many as we can. All right. Oh, this is just a nice comment from someone. I think having this webinar for coordinators, keeping us notified, etc., is wonderful, helping us keep us informed. I wouldn't mind having more.
We're working on it. Thank you. As Shannon is queuing up the next question, um, and I'm reflecting back of the questions we've had so far, I just want to state that the changes made at this point is designed to enhance the coordinator's experience. It's not designed to put a burden on you. It's not designed to take anything away from you. I can see some positive things coming down the road, but I just think it's fair to wait till I have a chance to meet with the 7 service program administrator so that I can further share my vision, some of the stuff that we've talked about as a board, on how we want to change the chapter experience, how we want to change top so that we can have membership growth, which hasn't happened in quite a few years. So that's why. I mean, and it's good, and I'm glad the person commented how they think these webinars are good, because going forward, as we go through questions and as we interact with service program administrators, um, we would like to have more of these webinars on like 1 or 2 topics, so that we would do a briefing like we did at the beginning, and then allow more time than the briefing takes to ask questions, because nobody has all the answers, and that's why we need you folks to ask questions. And if at times we're fumbling around with the way to answer the question, it's not that we're trying to hide anything. It's not that we're trying to misdirect anything. It's just that there's so much going on all at once that we don't want to make a mistake. And you know what happens when you try not to make a mistake? You make a mistake.
Isn't that the truth? Here's our next question, Rick. Will the service program administrators be able to have additional jobs in TOPS, such as being on the board, being a coordinator, area captain, and etc.?
The board question is that's I'm going to go back to the bylaws. If they're a TOPS member, then they're eligible to be voted onto the board. As far as coordinators and area captains, was that the rest of the question, Shannon? I'm sorry, I was.
Yes, sir. That is the rest of
Yeah.
the question.
No, they will not be able to do that. And that just occurred to me. Remember when we were all in Montreal? For those of you who were there, I really, how I felt about, coordinators being acting as area captains and regional directors acting as coordinators. They're job divisions for a reason. It's a temporary thing, not a year-long thing. And I challenged all of you to go out and make sure you find area captains to cover underserved areas.
And I think this might be a nice time to have Leslie chime in for us because she has some data regarding what happens in areas when folks are filling multiple positions.
Thank you, Shannon. What we have found was looking at membership numbers that on average, when a field staff position, be a coordinator or a regional director, is also covering another position, be it an area captain or a coordinator, that those areas tend to lose more members on average. And if you think about it, that kind of makes sense, because if somebody's looking for help and they're reaching out to the same person and not getting an answer, they tend to get frustrated.
And Leslie, I'm going to ask this question also while you're on the line. Will the service program administrator be a signer on my state bank accounts?
On your what bank accounts? I'm sorry.
State bank accounts.
There is no reason why they have to be. They can be, but there's no reason why they have to be. A lot with the banking issues right now, sometimes it's very, very hard to get everybody all together at the same time to open, close, or change an account. So sometimes it's just easier to use people in the area that can meet at a bank.
Thanks, Leslie.
You're welcome.
Next question. Are the monthly reports going to change when the service program administrator starts, both for the area captain and for the coordinator?
Wow, great question, and I expected that to be the first question. Right now, I'm asking the coordinators and the area captains to continue to use the same form. What I told the area captains a couple of weeks ago is you still use the same form, but please rest assured those reports will change. But they'll change with input from the service program administrators. So we kind of have to use what we have right now, and we'll talk about this in a couple of months. But kind of going back to a moment ago, is that the service program administrator is just going to help people hold people accountable to fill positions, to make sure reports, whatever they're going to look like in the future, are sent in on time. And again, we just got to wait to get their input to help craft the next step.
All right, so I guess with everyone finishing their resumes recently, these state and provincial events are high in everyone's mind, so we have lots of questions still about that. Will we be having a field staff meeting with our new service program administrators at the Portland IRD?
Shannon, help me out here, because we were just talking about this the other day. Hey,
I do believe that we talked about yes. Doing that, but we were going to maybe be discussing that with those involved before finalizing. Does that sound familiar?
Yes, thank you. Because, and that's right, I've got, to make a couple of phone calls this week. Again, as a reference point on what's going on with the regional events going on the next few months, with regional directors still going to the events, and occasionally a service program administrator may be there. Think about this similar at IRD. They're also, the regional directors are going to be there. The service program administrators are going to be there, and we're going to be working with the regional director in charge to make sure that we've got everything covered. So more information will be coming out on that.
All right, next question. Will we still need to contribute a significant amount of the funds we make at our regional recognition days to the publicity fund?
Okay. To the publicity fund and to other funds, Tops Club Incorporated is a nonprofit, and then we have various funding streams that we can use to cover expenses and promote and use publicity. So yeah, there's still going to be contributions to the publicity fund. I've been talking with Shannon on this, and we're going to be again talking to service program administrators on how this is done. I would dare say, in my opinion, that we can do a better job explaining how the funds are used and why they're directed in that way going forward. And this might be an example of one of those meetings that the service program administrator would have with field staff on this particular subject and other funding streams.
Okay, here is a question that we had gotten previously, also sort of related to marketing. We'll try to pick up some of those in a row.
Okay.
I've been told that our target group is the older adult, age 55 plus. If this has been the case for the last 70 years, it is no wonder that our membership is dwindling since our members are passing away. I was informed of 3 deaths of members just in the last 2 weeks. Are we changing our target group to target younger people?
Okay, I understand that question, and I'm right out there with you on that. And certainly, when I was a coordinator, I tried to do that, to try to open up different areas to have younger people, more men. And as I talk to folks, that's a great idea. But as I mentioned earlier, are the chapters ready for the change? And I think we've got to make sure that if we're ready, if younger members show up or if more men show up. And that's part of one of the reasons why, in talking with the board as we were trying to decide different ways to go, is that we've got to make sure that we're ready to receive them. So clearly, some of these changes are designed for that. We're just, again, a lot of things happening at the same time, and eventually, hopefully, this will all come together.
Rick, do you mind if I expand on that just a bit?
Yeah, and I think Barb wants to also offer some comments.
After you, former Madam President.
Oh, wow. Thank you. One of the things that we need to be considerate of and take into account when we look at member age is that it's an average age. What you do not want to see happening is the TOPS population aging older and older, which in fact is what is happening. We are not getting as many members coming in their 40s, which is an ideal time when empty nesters have free time available that they could be joining groups like this and focusing more on themselves. Rather than concentrating on very young members. If we could just focus on this group of 40 somethings, which is taking the hardest hit in terms of joining and staying with the organization, that would in itself change our distribution to a somewhat younger population. Interestingly enough, almost all weight loss organizations, particularly those like Weight Watchers and Jenny Craig and Nutrisystem, have the same target age demographic. So we're not unique in that. We just don't want to age out our population. And the best way to do that is look at 40 somethings. Thanks, Rick, for giving me a chance.
No problem, because like I said, it's hard to remember everything.
I know that's true.
I just want to share too, because we've been doing so much in advertising that I don't think folks are aware of. We have done a huge amount of advertising on Facebook and Instagram over the years, and we do have campaigns that have been aimed at people usually 45 plus, sometimes 35 plus, depending on the message. And what we find is we have people who see that and go to the chapters, but then they don't feel welcome or like it's for them for whatever reason. And that was part of the motivation behind the chapter checklist that went out in December, and some of the other initiatives that we've been doing. It just all goes to chapter readiness, because it doesn't have to be a whole room full of 40-year-olds for people wanting to stay, but you have to have at least a couple of people who other people may identify with. And of course, there's many ways that people identify with other people. Age is just one of them, but it's an important thing. I think few of us, if we showed up to a group we thought we might be interested in and it was full of 18-year-olds, honestly, would we want to stay in a group with that was full of people in that age group? I mean, it is something to consider.
And I'd like to kind of like just summarize all this, is that, you know, I've been on the job for 11 months, and I've been impressed with the amount of data that it exists, that headquarters has. And as much as I'm a data type guy, there's a lot to wrap your arms around and dig through. And it's going to be real interesting when we share that data with the service program administrators based on some of the skill sets that are there, on how we can get that information down to the coordinators to share with the area captains down to the chapters. I think most of you would be surprised that on what the data indicates, and that how over time TOPS has been trying to accomplish that. And again, that's why we're at this point with this transition.
All right, moving on to another topic. Our RD did a field staff training at one of our area recognition days. Is the RD still expected to do that this year?
No. If I heard that correctly about the traditional RD field staff meeting, sharing with the information, the answer is no. They were tasked, and that's the wrong word. They were encouraged to still go to all these events, like everything is still in place, to have an opportunity to say goodbye and again do the awards and stuff of that nature. But they're not going to have the information to share with the coordinators and area captains, because that will be coming from the service program administrators in a few months. Also, too, I think, to be fair, in some of discussions going on at the board level as everything was being put on the table and stuff. I think it's difficult sometimes to have training sessions during a party atmosphere or a recognition day, because you're focusing on the members. You want to make sure everything's in place so that we can honor the members, and to have to worry about doing some training or sharing information and trying to get everything in place. That's a lot going on for that period of time, and the period is short. I mean, they're just there for a couple of days, and the coordinators and their committees have a lot to do to take that time to break out, to do training on stuff that's really important for them, for you to know, needs to be done in a different venue or a different atmosphere. So the discussion preliminary has been set up where those training or those field staff meetings between the service program administrator and the coordinators and area captains will be in a different venue and different methods to share the information.
Similarly,
Shannon, I almost feel like when I'm done answering, I should say Rick out or Roger, so that you know, I'm not trying to come up with another fancy answer.
Well, I have some questions. So the question is regarding field staff. Are there any ideas on how to recruit area captains? I work very hard to find coverage with just no success, and I know my RD had the same problem. Did you get that, Rick?
Oh, I'm sorry, I hit a button.
Did you hear the question?
Well, yeah, I heard the question, but when you talk with your hands, you hit a button, and so anyway, that is going to be discussed with the service program administrators. This is not part of the problem, but we are looking for ways to help incentivize or provide more support to the area captains. Again, that's probably not the whole issue, but we think it's a good part of it. So more will be coming down on that as we discuss discuss that topic with the service program administrators.
Okay, we have a couple more publicity-related questions. The advertising funded by the publicity money seems to be going to larger metropolitan areas only, like shopping malls, etc. Will the contributions from those areas be based on per capita instead of a similar amount given from each state? I'm going to go ahead and field that if that's okay, since I've been overseeing how most of those funds are spent if the RD is not spending them. The RDs have the ability to decide how much is going to each of their states, and I will say that over the years they have been very fastidious about making sure that all of their areas are getting money, and that has been done very fairly. I will say that from headquarters, what we're trying to do is reach, because we don't want to raise membership fees, because we only have a certain amount of money being a nonprofit and we want to reach the most people possible, we will oftentimes go for, so for example, for some of the magazine ads that I'm sure you all saw, we can't afford to buy a magazine ad in every, that goes to every single newsstand in every single state. So we have to pick those, and then for those, we pick metropolitan states or areas where there is availability, and that is simply a matter of cost effectiveness. But there has been a lot of Facebook and Instagram advertising that goes out to rural areas of the U.S. and of Canada. And I do mean a lot.
I'd like to give a philosophical approach to that question, and it's this: I'm sensitive to the question about, funds are being raised in a certain area, and you're hoping that that's going to be used in the area. But philosophically, how I'm looking at the whole process and what we're talking at the board level is that there are times where maybe a neighboring area or a neighboring state needs some attention, but are unable to raise the funds to do that. Phil, if you think about the greater good, what's being raised in one area is being raised for TOPS as a whole. And that if we're helping another area, and maybe it's because it's got a bigger demographic area and you're going to get more bang for the buck to try to shore up our membership numbers, then that's where the funds need to go. When you start going per capita, then it's a little rough because some of the smaller areas or the less populated areas, rural areas, are going to take it on the chin. And that's not what we're here for. We're here for the greater good of keeping TOPS alive and going for everyone. So, I mean, we know there's events sometimes that go in the red. Does that mean that area shouldn't get any help? I don't think so. And that's what we've been talking about aboard, of trying to level the playing field a little bit, and also to, at the same time, lessen the burden on individuals, all the way from the area captains on up to the coordinators. So that's my take on that. And to those who sometimes wonder why we want to do more advertising, just look what's been happening in the past few years, that what the communication department has done by getting these ads in top-notch magazines and getting good rates, for them. But those have got to go out in high-density areas so that you get more exposure. That's just my soapbox for the moment.
Thanks, Rick. With your permission, we'll bring Leslie on for some sales tax fun.
Good luck.
Aren't you glad you're here, Leslie?
Oh, yeah.
All right. So there are several questions, but let's start with this one. I think you should raise the membership to $34 to include the new tax roll. It would be so much easier, all caps, exclamation point.
Sure, but then where do you stop if they buy items? We have to charge sales tax on memberships. In some states, we have to have sales tax. Unfortunately, you can't just make a blanket amount statement to cover all the different scenarios, because there's 50 states that charge sales tax differently.
And I want to thank the person for asking that question, because I asked the same thing. And we have to remember the Canadian members, that would influence their membership rate to no fault. I mean, they don't pay the sales tax.
And this is also illustrated by a comment that we got really quickly here, which was, my state does not charge sales tax. Don't change it. and unfortunately, I think the reality is
sales tax. It may don't have sales tax. It may be coming. Right now, about half of the states have made decisions on sales tax. The other half are still in their legislators' hands, including New York, Florida, California, and Texas. And those are waiting for a lawsuit to finish to see if they can go backwards to collect sales tax. So be careful what you wish for with sales tax.
All right, here's our next question. All the emails coming from headquarters about missing weights and dates and now short sales tax is getting very overwhelming.
It's getting very what?
It's getting what?
Overwhelming.
Overwhelming. Yes. Yep. That is one of the topics that we're going to be discussing with the service program administrators on see how we can help this out. And again, another example of what we're trying to do to lessen the burden on the coordinators and the area captains. A lot of moving parts.
Can I just say something?
Absolutely.
If a membership comes in that requires sales tax that does not pay sales tax, TOPS still has to pay that sales tax to that state. So that is money out of TOPS pocket that we could be using for other things, like advertising in your area. Okay,
absolutely. The next question is, when are we going to get a handle on this and get all of the forms on the website and everywhere else updated? Wow, I would love to have the answer to that. But the truth, Leslie, please chime in, is that the states are making decisions about this as fast as we can print new forms.
That's correct. They're making decisions on a daily basis, and they're making decisions and going into court. So I'm hoping it will be settled down by the end of 2019, but I am not optimistic on that.
So I believe what we discussed is because all of the chapters use the membership application, and because that does come stuffed with the My Day ones and in the TOPS rules, and we do send out refills of those throughout the year, that we would try to keep the sales tax always up to date on the L3 to the very best of our ability. Does that sound correct, Leslie?
That does sound correct, and to that, we're even putting stickers on the ones we just printed because the rules have changed.
Just from the time we sent it to the printer to the time that it came back. So
Correct.
Please bear with us. We're trying to keep up with it as best we can, but we really don't have control over state legislatures and when they decide to make decisions. Leslie, was there anything else you wanted to add on the sales tax issue?
No, not really. Just to say that each of these have been researched very diligently by myself and by our outside auditor. Everybody will tell me, well, we're a nonprofit, we don't have to pay sales tax, and that is just simply not true.
Right.
That is not, being a nonprofit has nothing to do with sales taxes.
We have another question, Leslie.
Pardon?
Oh, I said we have another question. This coordinator is wanting to know when folks will be able to apply for funds and get their travel arrangements made for IRD.
The coordinators themselves?
The coordinators themselves.
We are starting already sending out checks for them. So we're accepting whether their RD sign it or whether they wait and their service providers sign it. I don't know, Rick, do you have a rule on that?
I'm checking my notes now. Does it usually stop by March, or I'm trying to look at the deadlines on where some of this stuff goes through.
So Leslie, don't we usually update the IRD 102, is it M or C, the one that goes to the coordinators, that we send that out to everyone?
I thought that was updated. I could be wrong.
Okay. But in
Yep.
any case, then that's a form that we should be able to find on the website, and we can confirm that tomorrow morning. So folks are free.
Right.
Coordinators who will still be coordinators would be free to make their arrangements and request reimbursement for IRD.
But Shannon, I don't believe Lori has sent out the forms to the coordinators yet. I mean, there's been so much email traffic back and forth, but isn't there a request form that goes out?
Yes, there is.
Yes.
Yeah,
Yes.
I don't think it's gone out yet. But but you're right. We'll look at it and we'll get a word out tomorrow. It's one of those dangly bits.
There you go. All right. What is the biggest difference between the regional director and the service program administrator?
The biggest difference is the service program administrator is an employee of TOPS, and the regional directors were independent contractors. And frankly, to get in the weeds, the way IRS rules are lately and different rules changing and fundings and stuff like that, that's the big one. So many times questions were asked, well, provide training for the regional directors. Well, you can't provide training to an independent contractor because of IRS rules and labor laws. So by transitioning them to regional directors and changing the job description and having them employees, it kind of clears up some of that misinformation and overlap. That is the major difference.
Thanks, Rick. It looks like our time always flies so much. It's a little bit after 8, so I think we need to be respectful of everyone's time. But I'm wondering if we couldn't just take a moment here before we give you a chance to wrap up to just take our post-webinar poll about how folks are feeling about things now that they have more information. And so I'm just putting that up right now. If you all could go ahead and chime in. And again, I have no idea of knowing who is voting how. So your frank feedback is what is most helpful, no matter what that feedback is. I know there are a lot of questions that we didn't get to. Our time is short, but I think as Rick said that we're just going to continue to work down this list of questions and round up as many of the dangly bits, as Ms. Barb Katie likes to call them, as quickly as we can do it well and be thoughtful about it. We'll give everybody just another second to vote. It looks like most of you have done that. And I'm going to go ahead and close the poll. Let's take a look at the results before we let our president send us off with some profound parting thoughts. No pressure, Rick.
No pressure.
All right. Which of these best reflects your feelings on the transition now that you have learned more? Excited, 33%, cautiously optimistic, 43%, curious, 7%, anxious, 3%, and undecided, 14%. Thanks, everybody, for participating with all of your questions and in participating in our polls. I know you probably have more questions. You can just keep on sending your questions in as you think of them and sharing them with your spas. I'm sure we'll all have more questions coming up. And Rick, with that, I'm going to kick it back to you.
Okay. Thanks, everyone, for participating in this. And there's, again, a lot more to come. really appreciate the questions being asked this evening. Please keep on sending them. It really helps keep us on our toes to make sure that we've got as much as we can cover everything. But the whole idea of this transition is to try to make what we're doing better. And to some extent, by having a group of 7 service program administrators, and think about the title, Service Program Administrators, they're going to be able to share a uniform message across TOPS Nation so that as coordinators, you all will hear the same thing. That's another positive of switching from an independent contractor to an employee status, because independent contractor is given a task and they're left to their own devices on how to get that information out. And we want to make sure that everybody hears the same thing going forward. And with the trainer sessions that will be developed throughout the year, put on by service program administrators, and webinars such as this, the whole idea is to help you be able to work more closely with the chapters, and we hope to try to alleviate some of the paperwork burden, if you will, and the accounting burdens that are being put upon you, so that you can service the members. And that's what the members want. They're more concerned about who their area captain is and who their coordinator is, because you see the members more often than we do. So all this is just try to enhance that experience that you have with as a coordinator with the area captains and your members in the area. So again, thanks. Sorry we went a little bit over, but you were asking so many great questions. And again, please send any more thoughts that you have in the next few days. Thanks again.
Thanks, everybody. We're going to go ahead and stop the webinar now. And just as a reminder, we are recording and we will have this up, if not by the end of the day Friday, we'll shoot to have it up Monday at the latest. Have a great evening.
Thanks so much.